Hello, everybody, and welcome to the newest episode of the LeanTossup Call of Duty League betting podcast. I am joined, as always, by my co-host and guest Ryan from CDL Metrics. Um, Last week, was a great week. How you doing in the? You experiencing post major hangover there, Ryan?
A little bit. The start of the major was good for me. The end, not so much. But I will say overall, it was a fantastic major. Optic winning is good for COD. There's no doubt about that. And it's just cool to see like a home team winning their own major. We really haven't seen that yet. Even like I'm trying to think of like the early CDL 2020 days. Well, I guess Atlanta won their own really early in the season. But, like, outside of that, we haven't seen a home team win, and it's just cool. Like, the whole stadium was packed with Optic fans. Beating FaZe twice, I think, firmly establishes them as the best team in the league. I think not a lot of people are gonna disagree with that. And, yeah, we finally have, like, a legit contender to FaZe, and honestly, like, there's a big group of teams right behind those that I think are, on the up and up that could have a shot. So, yeah, a super competitive season, a fun last weekend, and now we're already into stage 2. I am so excited.
Yeah, and I mean, so it's an interesting point about Optic. Obviously, Optic had an amazing run. They did really well. I wasn't on them initially, but then as of Sunday, I was on them fully. I was on them when they beat FaZe. I was on them for that. But then when they took down FaZe, I was like, okay, I was kind of of little mind they could win the tournament. I had them -1.5 against London, money line in the finals. So like I was definitely on them. I'm very happy with London there, with Optic there. London had a good run. Toronto, of course, making top four somehow without winning a single hard point. Phase after losing to Optic, then immediately just turning it on and losing only one map, which was a search that they probably should have beaten London in pretty handily. Um, yeah, it was an interesting Sunday. Great tournament overall, of course. Paris beat Seattle. That was something maybe we didn't
Yeah.
necessarily call. I mean, I bet it. I didn't think. I'm not sure if you bet at money line, but we definitely bet like plus 2.5s. There's definitely value on a lot of those picks. So I think that was again. If you're listening to us, that was great. The interesting thing about that game specifically is that there was sharps on. There was money coming in on Paris. That line opened up on Friday night at plus 900, like plus 900, 10 to 1, and or whatever. I can't remember. I don't know. I don't ask me to convert back between them,
That
but
sounds
basically
right, yeah.
plus 900. Then almost immediately went to plus 800. I'm like, okay, I grab this quick. And again, I actually called it. I was like, oh, was it going to open at plus 900? It just did open plus 900. Then immediately went down to plus 800. I grabbed it. Then it went down even further as at kickoff. Basically, that was down to like plus 650. Like the plus 2.5 open at like minus. I think it was -110, and then like it was already down. Like it was already down to plus one. The spread was already down to plus 1.5. So there was sharp money on Paris. So I don't know if those people who are betting on that listen to us. If they are, great. I'm very happy for that. There are actually quite a lot of people who listen to this podcast. You'd be surprised at the number, and a couple watch on YouTube, which is fine. I'm mostly just the YouTube's there just if you want to watch it. Maybe we'll expand video content in the future, but yeah, no, a lot of people actually watch this. So if you guys are the ones, the sharps, if you're the lean toss up CDL metric sharps, that good for you. If not though, watch out. There's some sharp betters here in the CDL. So at times, basically, it seems like some people just start unloading money on some of these games. So that's very interesting. That was kind of interesting to me. I didn't think there was going to be nearly as much sharp play on Paris as there was. But it was there, and we were there with it, and it went very well. So we're gonna walk through the matches for this week, obviously, and then as we get to different teams, we'll kind of talk about how their major went and the steps forward for them. Again, some of these teams have some very interesting paths forward for them, and we'll talk about them when we get to them. First up, Subliners versus Ravens. This line has moved a lot as it currently stands. Subliners, okay, I'm seeing different prices on different books. Subliners are plus 135 on Bovada to win. Ravens -175. Spread subliners plus 1.5 -150. Ravens -1.5 plus 115. Over 4.5 plus 160, under 4.5 minus 210. Now, this line has moved a lot. Just a couple of hours ago at this point, we're recording this Wednesday afternoon. The subliners were plus 350 to win this game. But then it was announced that Gizmo is due to, I mean, personal reasons, I guess, and to mental health. But obviously, he's had some family troubles again. He posted this on Twitter. He's okay. He's had a couple medical issues, but obviously some issues with his family. He's taking the week off, which again, power to him. And honestly, we probably should see a lot more of this in regular sports. Honestly, power to you. Honestly, taking a week off again. You're playing 2 qualifying matches this week. It's not the end of the world. Get rest up, feel better. That's okay. Like take some time for yourself, take deal with your family. It's all good. So, but that being said, it crashed the line. I kind of disagree with that being the big like the line moved from plus 300 to a plus 100 is kind of crazy for that alone. Um, I mean, I don't even know if we see that kind of line movement in an NFL football game if the starting quarterback goes down in some cases. Um, I mean, the thing of it is, my model actually did kind of like New York, and I'll walk through kind of why my model does like New York against the subline against the Ravens, and then we'll obviously here I'll let Ryan chime in then. But the thing of it is, so there's been some updates to my model now. Last week I kind of tested out an experimental model that deals kind of more with regression. So it's using more advanced stats using kills. So it's basically figuring out what the KD of any when two teams play off against each other is, and it uses advanced stats. It basically plays off a lot of. It's kind of a continuation of the NFL model. A lot of the stuff, kind of a lot of the stuff I built into the NFL model is now being continued into the COD model. And basically, it forecasts the kill differential between two teams, and then from there, it then uses a linear regression to figure out what the spread will be in, say, a hard point or a search and destroy or a control. But then it also uses elo in there too, because it's also an important fact to keep in mind that Elo is better, especially the version of Elo that I'm using. It's a lot better to take into account, like, oh, okay, this team barely wins games, or this team wins games by a lot. So again, while it's not always looking at like, oh, okay, well, this team, like with kills, say, okay, they should win it by like 50 points. If they say if they certain kills, then they should win by 50 points. If the thing says, well, yeah, but although they should lose by 50 points, they're usually better at translating. So maybe they get down to 25. That's a lot more important on the spread, I'd say. But yeah, so my model really kind of has like the subliners. It kind of thinks this went to 5 games before this news. I don't think it changes that much. But basically, the Ravens had a very like they got top four, and again, power to them, great to their organization. But they had a pretty easy path to get to top four, right? Round one, they play LAG, Los Angeles Guerrillas, 3-0 them, pretty very dominant fashion. I think it was yeah. Oh no, sorry,
Three
it wasn't.
two, three
No,
two.
no, that's right. It was 3-2. Sorry, I'm thinking of LAG's second game. So they beat LAG 3-2, and then LAG immediately then goes out 3-0-3 against Rocker. Again, not a great tournament for LAG. So again, only beating them 3-2, not the greatest look. Next round, they beat Toronto 3-1. We're going to talk about Toronto more later, but again, a team that has not didn't win a single hard point all week. If two of your wins against them, again, it's not your fault for not being like for not playing a good hardpoint team. But again, they weren't. So like their wins against Toronto is not particularly impressive, especially considering the fact that they only won the first hardpoint by 15 points, and then they only won the second hardpoint by they won by a couple points more, but like still less than 50, I believe. And then the next round they play Optic after winning the first round, which is the first game, which is Berlin, which is one of their more favored maps. They then immediately lose the next 3 straight games, and then against FaZe, they get blown out in both hardpoints. They pull back a Desert Siege search and destroy when they were down. I can't remember if it was 5-1 or 5-2. And then they lose
Five
a
one.
five. It was 5-1.
Five.
Yeah. So like that's
Yeah.
a huge comeback, especially against someone like FaZe. And then also they lose the control. I think they lost the control 3-1 or 3-2. I can't remember. But either way, Atlanta had far more kills. They were on offense. Basically, Atlanta was on offense on or Atlanta was on defense round five. So the thing of it is, although it sounds great, like yeah, London they got top four and great. I think that's their best showing. Oh no, top three. Sorry, that's their best showing ever at an event outside of Champs, the Modern Warfare Champs, which I think they came top four at. But I mean, that's not like when you look at the path of how they got to the finals. I'm not um I'm not completely sold that this team was that great. And I mean, getting losing Gizmo is a key piece to that team. Again, now you're going to have Paul X. Again, we're hearing about this change on Wednesday. How many days are they going to have to practice? Well, this game's on Friday, so you're going to have 2 days to practice. Again, this is kind of the same territory we had with the subliners a little bit ago when royalty was just kind of thrown into the team with like 2 days to prepare, right? So I'm I'm not buying. I think this value, this line was, there was value on the subliners before this change happened, and I I mean, this is probably about the line I would have set actually. But I think that now there's probably, maybe now there's value on the Ravens, but there's a decent chance the subliners can win this game. What do you have here, Ryan? What do you think? Do you agree with my synopsis that Ravens had a pretty easy path to the finals, and that maybe they're a little bit overvalued, or at least they were overvalued before before Gizmo news? Or do you think that this team was really all it was? This team is a top three team in the league.
Yeah, I think you're half right. And we might disagree on London, like for the most part, like maybe a majority of the year. I do think they're still a really, really good team. Their major, despite finishing third, I think was disappointing too. And part of the reason why I like them heading into the major, we talked about the futures market. They were plus 450. I did think that was a good value. And like, listen, if you told me London would be in winners final before the major, I'd be like, yeah, I love my plus 450. Then they have to win, two matches, two out of their next three matches, essentially. And they didn't, right? They lost to Optic, they lost to FaZe, but they were there. Like, I don't mind that looking back in retrospect. And again, part of the logic why I like them to get that far was their easy path. Like LAG is one of the best matchups you could ask for. Now, they didn't win that convincingly, but they did. So, the good matchup matters. And having the high seed matters too, especially in the major, right? Where there are no coin flips. It's just high seed gets that preferred map set. So I do think the match against Toronto, although Toronto was bad at hardpoint, um, we could talk about Toronto later too. Toronto's hardpoint opponents, specifically in the major, were brutal. Like there was a reason they didn't win any. Now, I think that stat is sticking out to a lot of people because it's 0 wins, right? If they like scrape out one hardpoint win, we were still talking about how bad their hardpoint performance would have been, but it was 0. So it's like, oh my goodness, how did they get that far without winning any hardpoints? London, they handled Gorillas okay, and they handled Toronto okay, and they showed some life against Optic and against FaZe, I would argue. Now, FaZe and Optic prove that they're kind of on a tier of their own, at least right now. Um, and it was interesting kind of going through day by day. I was recalculating the odds for each team to win the major. And I think after both day one and day two, London's odds, despite winning their matches, had dropped from their pre-tournament odds. And part of that was their wins weren't super impressive or convincing. And part of that was Atlanta and Optic looked like different animals, right? Like those teams came out and just looked incredible. So part of it was, yeah, London maybe aren't quite as hot as they were looking like they were in the qualifiers. And when they do run into Optic or Atlanta or both, which they ended up running into both, that match is going to be harder now. So I do still think they're a very good team. I don't like Gizmo, great, great player. He's been phenomenal this year. I think Paul X is a good player too. He has some camaraderie with Afro. They both played on London last year for a bit. And he's a veteran. He's a young guy, but he's been around enough where he's just a good player. So I don't think that drop off is going to be catastrophic. So I do really like their value in this first match versus subliners because what have subliners shown anyone? Not a whole lot since like they beat Boston in the qualifiers 3-2. They had a pretty good kickoff classic, but that's now, almost 2 months ago. I like London still a lot. and they have some underlying metrics that are really, really good still. They're still winning hard points by a lot in general. I know some of their games were closer, but um, they're still blowing out a lot of teams in hard point. Their map pool is pretty deep. And actually, this might surprise people. They are first in first blood win percentage in Search and Destroy, which uh, there's some sort of issue with that, right? Because they're far and away the best team at getting first bloods. They're getting them at nearly 58% of the time. But they're winning less than half of their rounds in Search and Destroy. So there's a huge issue there with not converting those first bloods into round wins. I think we maybe see regression with that both ways, where we're going to see less first bloods from them, but I do think they'll start converting those more. Um, so yeah, it's a curious case with them. If they can clean up the search, the team's looking really good. And again, when we talk about team changes, especially in this game, like I don't think it matters for hardpoint all that much or control, to be honest. Those game modes are just so fast paced, and the squad spawns kind of dictate your breaks and setups for those hills. So team coordination doesn't matter quite as much. In Search and Destroy, the team change will matter. But again, Paul X has some history with Afro. He won't be asked to be the shot caller. Like I imagine that's still zero. So this team's good. Like this team's still good. I think they should make winners bracket for Major Two. Their schedule for Stage Two qualifiers isn't terrible. Um, and yeah, we do have an issue if they do drop this to New York. And I do think kind of the one way that happens is New York win the coin flip. So this isn't a major anymore. We're back to qualifying matches, and coin flips determine the map set basically. And there's a bit of a mismatch in control, at least between New York and London. So if New York win the coin flip, we're probably going to see Tuscan as the control map. If the opposite happens and London wins, we'll probably see Gavutu. And that's a huge mismatch. That's, the difference between being favored, 60-40 to being the underdog 60-40. Like, if not bigger than that. So that's big. It also affects hardpoint maps and the sides you spawn on. It can really matter. So I think step one for New York to win this match, win the coin flip. You've got a shot if you're favored in the control map to either win both search maps, or I mean, I can't really make the case that they're going to win a hardpoint map unless London are like willing to play Bocage, maybe. I don't think they will be though. I don't know. It's tough to make a case for subliners, especially with how they've looked lately. I do think this team bounces back at some point, and their schedule this stage is slightly easier than it was last stage, but this is still a tough match. And yeah, I'll take London. I see minus a map and a half at plus 115. I don't mind that. Normally, I would say if we're going to get Gavutu, to just take the over 4.5 rounds in that map, but we don't quite know yet. Also, big mismatch between these two on Kavudu. And then same thing on Tuscan, right? If New York are the clearly better team on that map, I don't know if I'd take the over 4.5 rounds. We still don't quite know if we're going to get the capture ticks versus kills tiebreaker for round 5. There's still a few question marks for this match and for the weekend as a whole, but um, I'm willing to back that London should not have fallen from whatever they were to minus 175. Like, that's way too big of a drop. Um, yeah, London are a value, and I might be picking them for a while, Robert.
That's fair. I mean, I do still like this London team. This team screams to me that it's kind of like it's a younger team. They're building the team up. Like I think this will be a very good team at some point. And I said this before. I think London does win a major this year. I didn't think it was major one, and their performance was a little lackluster. Plus, you're losing Gizmo. Gizmo was a big piece to this team. Like it wasn't like Gizmo was nothing. So I'm uh, I'm a little torn. I kind of the thing is the other thing we have to factor in here is that this is desperation time for the subliners. Like this is literally like Clay. No one is retired yet. Crim6 had his weird surgery thing, and he's back and he's better now. His ear surgery. I I think this is it for this team. Like if they don't find a win this weekend, if they go 0-2, right? Again, they're playing the Ravens, and then they're also playing the Mutineers, which I mean there's some value against on them against the Mutineers, but like if they don't find a win here against this Ravens team, they're like they could be like or Ravens and then also the Florida team. Like you could be looking at multiple team changes here. You could be looking at either Krim or Clay gone from this team. And I mean, I don't know if that's like there's definitely motivation in there, right? They're not happy with their results so far, and they're going to have to do something. And if you're dealing with a Ravens team that's coming off maybe a little bit of a hangover, coming top three, and with not the greatest of stuff to that, yeah, maybe this is a great position to get the Ravens. And to be honest, you should kind of welcome the if the Ravens do lose this game, you should actually kind of welcome it because then it's going to drag them down, and then you'll just get amazing value on them like next week. So like honestly, you should kind of welcome it a bit. Like one of the reasons I didn't bet them in the major because they were 4-1. If they were 10-1, they would have had a ticket on them, right? So you want them down a little bit. Let them lose a couple games. Next game, we will deal with Surge versus Breach. Surge -1.5 +140. Boston Breach +1.5 -185. Seattle -150 on the money line. Boston +110. Over 4.5 +145. Under 4.5 -190. I bet this game on Sunday night at with Boston at I believe it was -110 or -120. I can't remember. And I also bet the +1.5 line that moved against me. I'm getting negative closing line value. I'm debating doubling up. Probably won't though. I like Boston here. Give me Boston. My model likes Boston here. I got so for the first game I've got basically London. I had again I don't make adjustments for Pollex versus Afra for Pollex versus Gizmo. I had London about a 70% favorite, but it was going to base all the maps were pretty close. I had that about 3-2. I have Boston about a 62% favorite, but that also going to a 3-2. I've got Boston as a better hardpoint team, which makes sense. Seattle did lose to Paris. I got Seattle as a better search team. Seattle wins the control, but then basically you would expect that at some point Seattle would win a hard point in there, and then that gets you to a game five, and then it could be mixy or whatever. But basically, yeah, I like Boston here. Give me Boston. Um, I'll let you talk in 1 second, but I do want to point out that a Betway, and we always talk about the Betway boost. The super boost is London Ravens versus Subliners, Seattle Surge. So it's Ravens to win to beat the Subliners, Seattle Surge to beat Boston, and Florida to beat LAG. And it's all of them to win, and I believe it is. Let me just double check. Yeah, I had the price here. That is plus 300. So that is remember as we talk about these because they always put super boosts out here that they know are going to lose. um I kind of like I like honestly I think we're going to be on like Seattle Surge seems like the obvious candidate of who they think is going to lose this game. I think that's who they think is going to lose the boost. London Royal Ravens could be up there as well, and maybe Florida could win, but LG could upset them. I don't know. We'll have to see. What are your thoughts on this game?
Yeah. I don't know. Everything's priced about right, I would say. And this is the tough one though, because I get Boston, right? Like Boston are the hotter team. I wouldn't say they're hot, but they have looked better as of late than Seattle has, for sure. Like no doubt. The one issue I have with Boston is their control. It is atrocious. They're 2-8 so far this season, and honestly, a lot of those haven't been close. And yeah, both maps they haven't looked great on. So honestly, the coin flip doesn't mean as much in this game. Obviously, if you're Boston and you win it, like you at least get your hardpoint map first and you get the preferred side on map 4. So there's that, but I don't know. I see these teams as pretty close in hardpoint and in search. I mean, like search is almost a dead tie between the two. In Boston, I have a slightly better at hardpoint, but it's just such a mismatch in control that I have to make Seattle the favorite. And I know they've been bad, but I'm just not going to discount the fact that they were among the best teams at the start of the year. And maybe they've hit rock bottom and now the bounce back is going to happen. It has to happen at some point. I don't think this drags out. Um, Granted, when they were winning, the meta was slightly different than it is now. Um, but these teams are unchanged since the start of the year. I don't love either way, honestly. I might wait, see if we get like a Tuscan control and then take Seattle minus a round and a half in that. Um, especially if Boston is willing to play. Like if Boston wins coin flip, picks Tuscan as the control map, that means Seattle starts defense first, which is better for that minus 1.5. Other than that, I don't really like much. What I will say is, as someone who maybe leans Seattle, I would wait. Although you did say this number's crashed, opposite of how you picked it. So maybe it continues that way. I tend to disagree. I do think people are going to come on to Boston here, maybe make them the favorite. Even yeah, it's honestly surprising. I thought I'd get Surge at plus money or at least even or something, but yeah, they're minus 150. I see, which that to me that's about right. So yeah, not a game I love, but big issue for Surge if they lose this. They have, according to my stats, the toughest strength of schedule for stage two. And this is their one of their more winnable matches. So if you drop this, I really, really worry that they're going to start in losers bracket. Like no joke. They have a gauntlet of a schedule to run through. They play FaZe and Optic, who again they're kind of on a tier of their own. And then both LA teams. Not that LAG's been great, but LA Thieves are definitely a contending team. So if you're Seattle, you got to get this one. Boston also has a very tricky strength of schedule. So honestly, both teams need it. Regardless of all that, yeah, just give me Seattle a little, but I might wait because again, I gotta think it comes back around to Boston.
Yeah, I mean that's a fair point. I don't know. I think I'll hold my I can minus 110 or minus 120 tickets. I'll hold that and I'll keep my plus 1.5. I've got some value on that, but um, yeah, I would not be surprised to see Boston win this. My model has Boston as just a superior team in hard point and search, and I mean control obviously is an issue. We'll have to see what it has. Just looking at the number here, your minus 1.5 is a plus 135 on Seattle. Um,
Not bad. Again, I need to wait to be sure it's
yeah.
Tuscan because I don't love right like winning in 4 rounds on Gavudu, but yeah, that's probably the way I'd play it. Other than that, I don't
Mhm.
see a lot. So
Well, it's interesting, right? It will depend on the maps Boston picks, right? Like I don't know, we don't know which maps Boston's going to pick yet. They could pick Bocage. I don't know if they'd be maybe a bit better on Bocage. I don't hate this Boston team. My model now has them as like solidly a middle of the pack team after that major. I mean, they somehow beat Florida through I think a miracle. Then they beat Paris pretty handily, which again, if Paris is a middle of the pack team now, then that's not a bad, well, I mean middle-ish of the
are
pack.
they? Oh my, yeah,
Middle, okay,
that's
middle-ish. Okay, I should have said they're like eighth. If they're eighth, then that's like okay, then right? Like they're not six, obviously, but if they're like eighth, then that's okay. And then they take the fight to Toronto. Like the Boston did take the fight to Toronto. Like I think it was what it was around 11 on the one search, and then like around 10 on the other search, or something. I
Yeah,
can't remember.
they definitely put up a fight. I do think
But
though
then
people are a
yeah,
little high on them. Like your argument for London, I think you can kind of make the same argument for Boston. Their path was not hard overall. Like you get Atlanta round one. Good luck with that. They flopped very hard, as most people thought they would. And then you come down to losers bracket. You get Florida, who's fine. I did have Florida favored in that match. Boston took them out. Good on them. And then you run into Paris. Like I'm not saying like Paris are god awful now because they did win a match versus Seattle, but like you'd much prefer to play Paris than Seattle, I think. So all in all, like yeah, good on Boston. They finished top six. Uh, but all things considered, I don't think their path was super tricky. Granted, yeah, Seattle couldn't even beat Paris, so that's the big question mark, right? You gotta. I'm expecting a surge bounce back at some point. I think it comes now, if at all. I will say though, again, their path this stage is very hard. So to think they start in losers bracket isn't out of the question. But yeah, I gotta think. It's just, to me, the prices don't make sense, right? Boston are a team that's competing. Seattle is a team that's not. Boston should be favored, but they're not. So that's the odd thing that I'm picking up on with this match. So I do expect line movement, and I'm gonna wait until there is any. So
Well, I mean, we're the sharps, right? Like it's not
true.
there's the people who are not betting with us are probably bad worse than this than us, right? Like that's the thing. Like we are the sharps. So like if we say hey, there's like breach should be favored and they're not favored, then right? I mean, like that's the thing, right? Next up, Florida versus LAG. Florida minus 1.5 plus 160. LAG plus 1.5 minus 210. Florida minus 150 on the money line. LAG plus 107. Florida over 4.5 plus 150. Under 4.5 minus 200. So this is another one I bet on Sunday night and got horrible closing line value on. My model actually like loves Florida here. I have this as like a 3-0. Like I have this as an absolute blowout. The thing of it is when you look at this LAG team now, right? Like the thesis of why this LAG team was better, like was an okay team a couple weeks ago, was like, oh well, yeah, they have problems, but like they're good at hardpoint. Right? Like if you're a top four, top five hardpoint team, but then you really struggle in S&D and in search, that's not bad, right? But like you're maybe like like you just need to improve those
You're
areas and
like
you'll be
LA
fine.
Thieves at that point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but the problem is now you look at my rankings, I have them as the eighth best hardpoint team, which is horrible. The 12th best, like the worst search team, so 12th search, and then ninth control. So they've gone from like good at hardpoint, bad at everything else, to now like bad at everything basically. And like, okay, maybe your hardpoint, okay, eight isn't the worst. I mean, they're still better at, I still have them better at hardpoint than Paris. But like again, if you have like one if you're a team because again in the past we've talked about an LEG team at one point they were completely driven by search and I remember God that the end of that season when just every hard point like after every hard point game the LEG team just kept getting worse and worse at hard point like just getting progressively more blown out every hard point there in stage 5 of last year but then we're like, oh no, now they're good at hardpoint, and but they're bad at everything else. But like if you can excuse being bad at everything else if you're a top five hardpoint team, then all you need to do is just pick off a game five and then you're good. But like if you can't do that, like if you're not locked in to win game one and four, then you're in trouble. And like that's the problem here with with this LAG team is that if you're not locked in to win games one and four, and if you're like 50-50 to win games one or four, and then you're guaranteed to lose game two, and then you're probably going to lose game three, you're going to get like 3-0 and 3-1 a lot. So that's why I had Florida on the money line. I lost, unfortunately, I lost value on that, but I still have Florida at minus 1.5. Looking at some game spreads, I'll wait until we see the map to decide some stuff. I'm seeing Florida plus 3.5 game map one. That seems insane. Um, I don't know. I like Florida here. My model likes Florida. It, the problem is, but the thing is again, we've talked about this before. If there's any one team that will screw us over here, it will be Florida. Florida is the Atlanta Falcons of the CDL, and I mean, I don't know. I'm on Florida here. I don't trust this LAG team. Florida will find a way to lose some other game in an hilarious way, but like this is the game they'll win. What do you think?
Yeah, I also kind of like Florida. The prices are about right as they were in the last match. And yeah, your like LAG rankings are pretty accurate to mine as well. I have LAG 7th in hardpoint, 11th in search, and 11th in control. So yeah, their hardpoint success has faded, and they haven't shown any improvement in search or control. I mean, more issues, right? Search, they're 3-8, and my numbers include the kickoff classic data. Search and destroy, they're 3-8. All three wins have been on Berlin. So, like outside of Berlin, they are 0-4. They're 3-4 on Berlin. Like even their best search map, they're 3-4 on. Like it's just there's nothing there. Their control has looked lackluster. Yeah, Florida are just a little better than them kind of across the board. I have Florida's hard point sixth, so narrowly better, right? If the teams play two hard points apiece, we probably expect a split. Search and destroy, I have Florida seventh. right around average. Control, I also have them seventh. They've just been like the most average team so far this year. They started in losers bracket at the major. Obviously, they lost their first match and got knocked out immediately. Um, I do think people are generally lower on Florida than me and you, maybe. And yeah, I my model hates LAG. I have them at 11th overall in the power rankings. They're only favored over Paris in a head-to-head match. Um, yeah, I think Florida wins. I don't know if it's going to be in 3 maps, in 4 maps, or in 5 maps because the distributions on those are super close. I have Florida to sweep at a 19% chance, Florida to win 3-1 at a 22% chance, and to win 3-2 at 22% chance. So everything's clustered. And yeah, again, I don't think coin flip matters a ton because I have Florida favored in both control maps. And like again, like these teams should split hard points because they're relatively even. So give me Florida. I don't love it. I don't know if the line's gonna move though. Like who's gonna come in and like really back LAG, right? But also who's gonna come in and like really want to back Florida. So um I guess favorite way to play it, just take the money line. It's minus 150. Um the minus a map and a half I see is plus 160. That's okay, but I think there's maybe a little more value in the money line just in case LAG do have a hot hard point day. Um, but yeah, I'll take LA or I'll take Florida, and yeah, I don't know. This game isn't super exciting. I don't know why it's the last one on Friday, but it is. So give me Florida. That's all I got to say about it.
Just a quick point, just to complement that. I have Florida sixth in hard point, sixth in search, and eighth in control. So
Yeah,
they,
like very average.
yeah. Now, one of the things I will say is, and I don't know if there's a difference between your model and my model. As time goes on, I start down weighting older weeks. So like I've down weighted the kickoff classic and week one. So like there's probably some slight differences and that might attribute some of the differences. But yeah, no, like it's the same thing. So like yeah, our rankings are very similar in that. But I pretty much most of our differences are probably just down weighting some of the older ones. But outside of that, yeah, no, Florida again. I the thing is like I will be fascinated to see how Florida finds a way to lose this game. If they do lose this game,
Yeah,
it'll be fascinating. It'll be like, wow, who would have guessed that like they blew themselves up in the round 11 when all they do was defuse the bomb? Like it would be something hilarious like that. But yeah, no, it's Florida is they're just they're Florida. Next up, first game on Saturday, Paris versus LAG. I'm going to need you to explain this line to me. Paris plus 1.5 minus 130, LAG minus 1.5 even. Paris plus 155 on the money line, LAG minus 220, over 4.5 plus 155, under 4.5 minus 205. Why is LAG favored in this game? I don't see it. My model actually I have LEG 51.5 to Paris's 48.5. So very clear value on Paris money line. Also clear value on Paris plus 1.5. I've got the hard points as particularly close. I've got those as basically dead even. Well, at least the game one hard points. I've got Florida better in search control. That's gonna be fun. Um, I don't know. Like I have no idea. Like we all watched Paris beat Seattle, right? Like so, based on like this is the thing, right? Like we saw Paris beat Seattle to win their first game of the year, but then they immediately got basically crushed by Boston. So like this is the confusing thing. So like Seattle lost to the worst team in the league, so then now we're just like okay, Seattle can beat Boston, a team that beat like this trial doesn't even make any sense, and then LAG, a team that got pretty well crushed after they took London to five. Now suddenly they're like minus 200 favorites. Like who would ever throw LAG in moneyline in a parlay? That's like objectively insane. Like that would be the worst ever value. There's so much value here on Paris plus 1.5, even the money line. And the thing is, this line actually opened up at plus 150 for Paris, and it's up to plus 162. People are actually betting on LAG. What are your thoughts here? Do you think I'm crazy? Do you think this Paris team has a win in it against LAG? What do you think?
I don't think you're crazy. Although if you do listen like just go back and listen to what I just said. I did say LAG are 11th in my power rankings, only favored over Paris. Granted, right, it doesn't take into account that they look decent with Tom Gravity in the lineup. And that was only 2 matches, right? But one player can make a big difference, and Gravity had a very good 2 matches. I think overall grade for his major was like a 107. And for those who don't know the CDL Metrics slash LeanTossup player grades, a 100 is like baseline average for a player. And he was 107 ish, somewhere in that ballpark, which is good. Like, it's good, especially on a team that is not good. Um, yeah, I don't know. My model says this is priced about right, but I kind of got to disagree with that. I would go Paris, but here's the thing. Yeah, you just said the line's moving the opposite way as we would expect. Like, who's picking LAG unless you're going, okay, LAG are going to beat Florida, so I'll get closing line value on their game the next day against Paris. Like, okay, maybe that's how you want to play it, but I don't know. I kind of say wait until Florida beats LAG. This Well, that's the thing though. If if Florida beat LAG, then this number is going to come crashing down again. Um, so yeah, I don't know what to say about this game. I think you're right in that Paris are a little undervalued. I don't know how much weight to put into their major performance because it was just 2 matches. Um, right, it was a player debut. So was that the honeymoon period? Is it over already? We'll see. But there's life to this Paris team finally, where this LAG team is down in the dumps bad. Like, nothing's going well for them right now. Again, at some point they're gonna win a match again. They'll bounce back a little bit, but boy, there's a realistic chance that LAG lose to Florida, lose to Paris, and at that point you're staring down the barrel of a losers bracket start for Major 2. So, yeah, overall I'm in agreement with you, but I don't love this match. Honestly, like any match with LAG, I don't think I'm gonna love.
Well, you actually had a very interesting point there about they could lose double barrel losses basically to Florida and Paris. The thing of it is, this is the next match, so they play on Friday night, and they play the next match on Saturday night. Again, there's obviously this isn't the NFL. It's not like you need to factor in rest. Obviously, they could definitely play a match at 6 o'clock. Well, scheduling probably gonna be 8 o'clock. They can play a game at 7 o'clock and then play a game at 3 o'clock the next day. So it's not a problem. But the thing of it is, and again, there's rumors. There's a video on Tactical Rab's channel. I haven't watched it because it came out a couple hours before we recorded this. I had a meeting I was working on. I had a meeting and then I had to do some work. But it says slasher or hook, one must go. That's the thumbnail. So not great. But basically, yeah, like here's the thing. So imagine this goes forward, right? LAG loses to Florida 3-0, 3-1, hell even 3-2. Probably not 3-2, but say they lose 3-1 or 3-0 to Florida on Friday night. Like, what's the look on Slasher's face when they play Paris? Like, I would not get like Slasher is a person who would just straight up give up. He'd just like, we're done. I'm done with this team. Like that is Slasher, and like a couple other people I could like. That's the thing. Like I could see Slasher just being like, I'm done. We're done. And like, but he's by the next week, then there's a new LAG. There's a new gorilla, basically. Like that's what I think is a very likely scenario to happen. Is that he's like, or I mean, Hook. I mean, Hook spelled his name wrong on a COVID test that didn't play a week. So like, this is the thing, right? Like, honestly, like, what someone or maybe multiple people could just check out on this team by playing on the Saturday morning game, especially if the loss to Florida is so just heartbreaking and just soul crushing. But yeah, that's the thing. That's my take on that. Do you agree with that, or do you move on to the next
Yeah,
game?
in general, yeah. Just even when you listen in on this LAG team mid map, like there's not a lot of like
Life.
excitement. I don't know. Yeah, life. That like I don't know what like yeah, it seems like a roster move has to be the move, but again, it's like who gets dropped, who doesn't. Do you just like drop the whole team and pick up an AM team? Like I don't know, maybe.
Well, that's
Um
that's the
uh,
question, right? We
like
were gonna talk about this. We probably should have talked about this before, but And again, this is the perfect time to bring in the player grades here. Which again, there's such a useful tool, and go check those out on the CDL Metrics page. They're in the Google Doc. It's an amazing tool. It's especially extremely valuable because it basically shows who's overperforming or who's underperforming on a team, and who the problem is. I mean, we're talking about Florida here. We suspect Florida will win this game, but if Florida were to lose this game, they could easily be looking down the barrel of a team change, and then obviously the player grade suggests that should be vivid for this LAG team. And there's another team that we're talking about later that is also, I believe, is this kind of same thing. For this LAG team, is there an obvious person who's like, this is the problem, they need to go? I mean, outside of, you can point to kind of Slasher there. I don't really like, it's really hard for me to point to someone and be like, no, 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 they're the problem. Like, it's because like you can make an argument for Slasher that he's underperforming, and he is. Um, you can make an argument for let me just find the player grades. Are they on the main one or not? No,
I
they're
have
in
a
second.
separate doc. If you go to my
Oh,
pinned
okay.
tweet,
There you go.
yeah, on Twitter, it should be there. But yeah, Slasher, Hook, and ASIM are all kind of clustered together. They're all below 100 grade.
Like ASIM is
Gunless,
technically the worst. ASIM is technically the worst at 92, but then Hook is at 95, right? So like they're all kind of. I mean, the one who shouldn't move is Gunless. Gunless is like actually pretty good.
Gunless has been, yeah, he's been steady all year. Like when I just blindly, like if I shut my eyes and I think about an LAG match, it's Gunless is in a 1v3 in search and he's screwed. Like that's what comes to mind every time I think of LAG. Um,
That happened in Seattle
yeah,
too.
I don't know. Hook, so the true of the four players on LAG, Hook had the best major one performance. So maybe you hold him over. Also, I feel like most people are going to say he's got the highest ceiling, which is fair. Like he was basically stage one MVP from last year, before his kind of fallout uh, of last year. Asim, he's the bomb carrier, but we saw this in Modern Warfare with Rocker. Like, he was bad. Like, early in the year, he was fine, but it really fell off late in the year. And part of that is he was just playing so blistering fast, running into objective, and in a 5v5 game, like, that first guy is gonna look bad. Like, good luck trying to enter a hard point when there's trophies and two guys in hill looking at you and three others cutting off lanes. Like, that's tough. He's also the bomb carrier, right? He does a lot for this team. Slasher as a main AR, like he hasn't been the worst main AR in the league, but he's closer to the bottom than middle of the pack. So yeah, it's a really tough call. But I don't know if one guy is going to fix it. Like it might have to be a large scale overhaul for this to work. So um, good luck to them and whatever they do. Maybe they look okay this weekend and bounce back, but yeah, team change might be on the way, and maybe as this stage progresses, we'll get more into that in future episodes.
There's a column idea for you there. It's a rank. So like we can sort positional ranks. Like, oh, so we can. I'm just looking at this, doing the rough math here. Slasher would appear to be the third worst main AR. So basically, 10th out of 12th, not great. Basically the worst main AR being Clayster, and then the second worst main AR being accuracy, which again, remember, Seattle Surge is favored over Boston guys. So, so like this is the thing, right? So I mean, again, when you're building this up, I think like their main AR they need to be better, right? I mean, like I don't understand why Gunless isn't the main AR. That seems like a better decision than having Slasher as the main AR. But again, there's egos and stuff. So, but no, I'd say. Say Slasher is potentially one of the issues. But moving on to the next match here, um, we've got Ravens versus Thieves. So again, this is another line this is actually a line I got insane closing line value on. This line was basically even. I bet Thieves. I got Thieves. I'm very happy with that. Um, I've got Thieves about a six. I had Thieves again at about a 63% chance to win this. I do actually really like that. The line currently is London plus 1.5 plus 120, Thieves minus 1.5 minus 155, Ravens to win money line plus 260, Thieves money line minus 385, over 4.5 plus 185. under 4.5 minus 250. I like don't hate like the thing is this line has moved too much I think now. Like before it was basically even and again we talked about this before like I mean, the thing is, Gizmo is important, and he's kind of a more SMG role, which is weird that they're bringing in Paul X to replace that. So again, I'm not the happiest with the replacement, but like again, like there's like I did only I had this as a 3-2 before. Like I did not have this as a Thieves 3-1. Again, that's obviously a possibility, but, like, I don't hate the idea of, like, buying back in at, like, Ravens plus 1.5 to cover some of that a little bit, especially because you've got an insane closing line value, right? Like, the Ravens could definitely win a like, knock off a hard point here or something. Um, I'd say I've got this going over 4.5 only 35% of the time, but so I guess technically it could have been probably could have been a 3-1. But, I mean, again, you can get that can be found at -155 now, so not a lot of value, but if Ravens do beat, thing if Ravens beat the subliners, maybe that line comes back down a little bit. What do you think? Do you think this is kind of a stay away now, or do you think this is kind of Thieves get a nice win here and then they move on to play for the last game on Sunday?
Yeah, I mean, you know where I stand on London. Like, and actually this game I like way more than the New York game. This line right now at least indicates that Thieves and Ravens are not particularly close. Like there's a tier gap between the two teams, and that's just not the case. And I have London as the better team. So yeah, I'm gonna take plus 260 every day of the week. Plus 1.5 at plus 120 is good too, but I'd prefer the money line. Um, yeah, and I know this is all Gizmo's out, Paul X is in, but I don't hate that either. Paul X was a good flex last year. Like on maps like Checkmate, he'd be running a Krig. On maps like Apocalypse, you'd see him with a an SMG in his hand. So they can roll swap pretty effectively. We saw Zero was a flex in Modern Warfare. Now he's a main AR. Afro has been an SMG, I think, the whole time, but like he's very good. Nasty's been good using both weapons. There's a lot of versatility on that team. Thieves, not so much. You kind of got your two ARs. Kenny can run a sub, but he likes the AR and he's very good on it. Octane's been a little disappointing this year. Envoy and Draza have had their moments. They're a very good team, obviously. I really want to see these teams square up on Gavudu because I think it will determine the ultimate Gavudu hardpoint team if it's not Optic or Atlanta. Um, but yeah, these teams are close. I think London are should be favored. Maybe not now with the team change, but it should be close to 50-50 if it's not. So give me London again, obviously. I'm not saying Thieves are bad. Like Thieves are fourth in my power rankings, just behind London. Their hardpoint is very good. Their search is worrisome. Um, like first blood percentage, they are under 50%, hovering around 49%. And they're third worst in round win percentage. So maybe some positive variance or positive regression going the other way for them, like I see with London. So yeah, I don't know. Their control is middle of the pack. London's is above average. Um, yeah, these teams are close. I don't know how many times I have to say it. These teams are close. But yeah, London plus 260 is very, very, very good. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, and I think that's an important point too. I think with with the thieves, like they were obviously very upset. Octane on Twitter was very upset that they lost to Phase there. And again, it's really sad when you're down when you up 2-0 and then you get reverse swept like Thieves was, especially when you win that insane search when they just literally just carpet bombed Phase off the map with grenades. Um, I mean, it sucks and it's unfortunate for Thieves. But that being said, though, literally Thieves have literally nothing to be ashamed of or sad for at all. That was clearly their by far best event as a team ever. Not even close. Best team event. This team is crazy. You've got Kenny and Draza, which are great. You've got Octane, who's also like this team is stacked. It's a really good team. Um, like I love this team going forward. I think I had them as a pick to win the major, I'm not sad by that pick at all. It could have been, again, this is the thing. They could have been playing off against, like, again, remember I bet Ultra 1 unit and Phase 1 unit to win it all. I mean, here's the thing. If FaZe wins that, if Thieves close out the game, the match they're up to, the map they're like the match they're up 2-0 on, then suddenly I basically have two teams at plus 700 in the winner. Well, not technically not the winners bracket finals, the winners bracket semifinals. At which point, then they're going to go on to play London to get a shot in the finals. So then basically, I'm getting a plus 700 ticket. No matter what, I'm getting a plus 700 ticket into the losers bracket finals. And then basically at that point, then you just hedge. You're like, cool, I'm just going to hedge, and then you have a very real chance. And again, if that had been Thieves versus London, would have had this match yesterday. But basically, yeah, like they could have been in. There was a real possibility that they could have been in the winners bracket finals, like the losers bracket finals. Like they could have been in the finals. These very easily could have been. They probably would have knocked out Toronto again the second time because Toronto was not looking great there on Sunday. And then again, they play London. If they knock out London, great, they're in the finals against Optic, right? And again, we'll see that match now. So yeah, I'm very long this Thieves team. Sad that they couldn't get it done this major, but guess what? There's three more majors and that weird middle major with the challenger teams that I'm not sure if it's going to count as a major. It's going to be really fun and exciting. I don't know exactly, but like yeah, there's going to be a lot more events and champs too. This team is in a great position. Nothing to be sad about. I'm expecting great things from the next major. What do you think?
Definitely. So here's what I'll say. Your statement that this is Steve's best major or like event, right? Since like CDL has like since the inaugural year, I think that's accurate. Like they did kind of struggle last year, all year. They right shuffled their roster around a lot. If we call this LA Thieves team the Optic Gaming LA team from 2 years ago, that was a team on paper that should have been good that really struggled throughout most of the year and kind of picked it up at the end. Um, that being said, they went 2-2 in their matches, which is what London also did. Like, I just want to compare London and LA Thieves. Like, if you want to go like big scope for like if you want to look at their entire year, I would say London's had the better year. They placed higher slightly than LA Thieves did at this major. Um, and they split their records in their matches as did LA Thieves. And I would maybe even argue that London had a tougher schedule. I know we talked about their first couple matches being easy, then they run into right Optic in Atlanta and can't quite get it done. The LA Thieves match versus Atlanta, again, a stronger showing than London maybe, but I don't know. For a 3-2, it was kind of a mismatch. Like Thieves win hard point game one by 49. That's solid. Then they win around 11 in Tuscan. Okay, it's around 11. But after that, it was all Atlanta. Like Atlanta win the control 3-1. Again, hard to do with kills being the tiebreakers. So many controls go to around five. They get it done in 4 rounds. Atlanta then win on Gavudu by almost or more than 80 points, and then they win the search on Berlin 6-2. So I mean, after those first two games that were kind of close, it was all Atlanta. So I don't know, just comparing resumes, Thieves to London, they're really close. Like I'm okay if you have Thieves higher and like London, right? Team change. We've talked about that at nauseum, but they're close. Like they're London can't be plus 260. They just I can't, but I will. With them because I mean they're just it's too much value, Robert. It's too much.
I probably do agree with that. I just think it does really depend on how Pollux fits in the team. I want to wait a little bit more and see how they do against subliners. Because the thing is, if they lose against subliners, then you can get this at like three something, right? So,
True.
um,
Then I'll really be on them. Oh
yeah,
my goodness.
I might actually do that too at that point, because that's too far. But next up, so now we're going to Saturday evening, I guess. Saturday at 6 o'clock. Minnesota versus Toronto. Minnesota plus 1.5 minus 145. Ultra minus 1.5 plus 110. Minnesota plus 124 on the money line. Ultra minus 170. Over 4.5 plus 155. Under 4.5 minus 205. I bet Minnesota. This is another game I lost closing line value on. I bet Minnesota on Sunday night at minus 110. They're up to 125. If I catch some bets earlier in the week, I think I'm going to actually invest in Minnesota here. I am upset with this Toronto team. Again, I am Canadian, so therefore I have to be a Toronto Ultra fan. No, I am a Toronto Ultra fan. That's fine. But no, I mean, I'm on Minnesota here. Honestly, Ultra do something here. Like win a hard point. You've got to change some stuff here. Like this Toronto team, and again, we're talking about like LAG subliners, to a lesser extent, like Florida, Paris. Those are teams that like desperately needed and or need in some cases a team change. Ultra's like screeching towards that here. If they don't start reversing this hard point thing, and again, Minnesota's not a bad team either. Minnesota destroyed LEG 3-0. Then they do lose to Thieves, but Thieves is probably one of the better teams in the league. Like, and again, like I actually have Minnesota as a slightly better search team because again, look at the Toronto won a bunch of searches, but look at how they won them, right? They beat London in a search 6-5. They beat in a game two search 6-5. They get crushed by Atlanta in the next match. They lose. They do that. Then they basically take. They have to beat Boston in around 11, which I think was the last one was like bare. I can't remember exactly what it was. Wasn't that the Insight sniping on the bomb, or was that Optic? I can't remember, but it was like a wall bang or something. And then
Yeah.
the same thing, and they take Boston to 10 rounds again. Boston, a good but not great team. And again, if you're supposed to be one of the best teams in the league, you're taking Boston to a game like to a round 11 or around 10 in some cases. That's not correct. And then again, just getting blown out by Phase and Search. This Phase team has struggled in Search and Destroy. They lost to Search to Thieves, and then all of a sudden you're just getting blown out by them in Search. And then again, control, right? So then at this point, then you're like, okay, well, Toronto has to win basically every search and then also win control. Well, they're not even the greatest at control. Like this Minnesota and Toronto has a history of upsets in this matchup. I'm on Minnesota. Give me Minnesota here. I Ultra do something here. You gotta either turn this around. At which point, if you turn this around, I'm gonna be happy because you turned it around. If you don't turn this around, then Hixie's gonna be. We're gonna see Hicks. I don't think it's gonna be this major. I think we're gonna see this team play out this stage unless something catastrophic happens the next couple weeks matches. But they do play some really good teams. Like they'll play FaZe again. They'll play Boston. I'm gonna definitely be keeping an eye out for the Methods Revenge match again when that happens again. Um, and I think they play. No, they don't play Optic. They play FaZe, Boston, and I think New York, and then Minnesota. Obviously, that should round out the teams. Maybe Paris somewhere in there too. But no, yeah, I'm not in love with this Ultra team right now. I think they have some problems. They either have to figure them out, or I think a team change is going to be coming up after Major Two. What do you think?
Yeah, interesting. I was just looking at the player grades so far this year, and I remember we talked about in the preseason. I want to say this was like before the kickoff classic, even.
Yeah,
We
we
were
did. It
kind of
was
talking about potential team changes for each team. And when we talked about Toronto,
yeah.
kind of the only player who came to mind was Kleenex. Um, and that might surprise some people because I think he maybe has some of the flashiest plays on the team. Like when he gets cooking, it's disgusting to watch. Like he reminds me of Capsule, right? Like he can just go at another level and just fly around the map like crazy. But sometimes that doesn't work. So far this year, he has the lowest grade for any Toronto Ultra player if we're taking Hixie out of the equation because he only played 3 maps. Which is maybe a bit of a surprise. Like Bance even has a higher grade than him, and Bance is shot calling. He's carrying the bomb a lot. Um, I mean, I don't think they need to do that yet. Like, let's hold on. But maybe we might have been right on the fact that it could be Kleenex as the first guy out. The thing is, if you put in Hixie, right, who's running that next fast SMG alongside Bance? Does Cammy switch over? I think that might be the answer. We did see Cammy on an SMG a decent bit in Modern Warfare, and even in this game, he looks good on it. He's obviously a very good player, right? Because you got to keep insight on the AR. He's too good at that. He is a slow player overall, so he's kind of locked into that role. Um, with that being said, I do have Toronto as the favorites in this match. Their hardpoint woes in the major were bad, but again, their opponents were pretty tough overall. Minnesota's not a great hardpoint team either. I think this is where Toronto could get one back. And honestly, this is a match where the coin flip does matter just because These teams are so close in my ranks that I think whoever gets that preferred control map, whoever can get that map one preference, like I do think that really does matter in this series. Um, Granted, I think value wise, you're right. Minnesota is the slightly better play. I don't love either side, honestly, so I'm gonna wait just to see if this line moves one way or the other. Um, but yeah, if you're gonna make me pick Minnesota money line at like plus 120 or better, not horrible. I'd prefer it to be at like plus 140, maybe plus 150, obviously, but we're not there yet. The one thing I will say with Minnesota that is worrisome, their search and destroy very good so far. They have the second highest round win percentage. They're essentially tied with FaZe um, at about 56% winning rounds in search. Their first blood percentage, Minnesota this is sub 50%. They're right around middle of the pack, I want to say one, two, three, four, five, six, seventh in the league. So they're not getting first bloods, but they are winning rounds at a very high rate. So right, it's kind of the chicken and the egg though, right? Because it's like, what is more like what do you want to believe in more? That teams that get the first bloods who aren't converting them will continue to get first bloods and start converting them? Or do you want to buy into teams that even when they're not getting first blood, they can come back in the round? I tend to think that the first blood percentage matters more, right? That's more reliable. It's like in football, like we hear about it with football analytics all the time. Like first downs matter. Like if you're looking at hard data, being reliant on third down performance is just unreliable. It's kind of random, it's noisy. First down performance is like very much like you get more data on first downs and just there's more creativity you can employ. It's it's kind of a is it a run, is it a pass? There's just so much creativity that goes into that down. And I think it's kind of similar to search and destroy in this case. Like first blood percentage, the primary factor I think holds true. And Toronto and Minnesota are very close. Toronto actually has a higher first blood percentage, but they're only winning 50% of their rounds as opposed to 56 for Minnesota. And while that 6% doesn't sound like a lot, it is. Like when you put all these teams together and you crunch the numbers, like 6% is huge. So I do think Toronto show maybe some improvement in search and destroy. And I do think Minnesota regresses a little bit too. So that's the one thing that worries me with this specific matchup. Um, but yeah, overall, this should be one of the best matchups of the weekend. I'm super excited for it. It's your team versus mine. As I said in the preseason, I've converted from a Dallas Empire fan to a Minnesota Rocker fan, for better or for worse. So we'll see. Yeah, yeah. What do they call this? The Battle for the North. I was blanking on that.
Yeah, the
Battle for the
battle
North.
battle of the North.
And I think Toronto take it, but it obviously wouldn't shock me if Minnesota come out and look okay.
I think I mean, obviously, I'm gonna root for Toronto, and again, this is where sometimes you can like emotionally hedge on games because like you're like, I want Toronto to win this game, but if they don't, then I win money. So like that's kind of nice. Um, but I mean, yeah, I don't know. I'm really out on this Toronto team right now. They need to show me something here. Like some of those were inexcusable. Like how they did not beat Boston in a hard point is I can't. Like I'm gonna go back through and rewatch some of those games, specifically that match, but, like, it's kind of scary. Like, and again, you couldn't win a single hard point against the Eves. And again, this isn't like they were winning a ton of hard points before. They were really struggling with hard points. And before it used to be like, okay, well they couldn't win game 1 hard point. I remember that last year. They struggled a lot with that last year. But then game 4 they're doing a lot better. Now they're actually doing better in game 1 hard points than game 4 hard points. You saw that against London where made game 1 hard point closer and then they got blown out in game 4. So, yeah, like it's concerning. I am not, and again, Berlin, right? They're like, "Oh, we're really good in Berlin." Well, they lost that to London, right? So, I am concerned about this Toronto team. Other fun fact here, some CL tweeted this out a couple hours ago. Attach is switching to the flex role for Rocker heading into this weekend's matches, and Priesta will be moved to the SMG. That actually is big because Priesta, again, by going by your player grades here, Priesta is actually one of the worst players in the league. He's like one of the worst. Well, not the one of the worst flex ARs. He's up there. He's beside Fellow and TJ and Crim6, and then actually just kind of two spots below Kleenex. So, and he actually he's right there above. He's right there in the pack with most of the subliners team. But that's the thing, right? So Priesta has had a problem. And attached when we seen him on an AR or with a sniper, he's been actually pretty deadly. So I'm actually really excited to see. I mean, maybe this role change is good. I mean, I guess Priest will be kind of a little bit of cannon fodder now, but if he can get in there and get like some big two pieces and stuff, which is kind of more where he's been benefiting, and you give Attach an AR, and again, Attach is the fourth best player in the league, fifth best player in the league. He's the best flex SMG in the league, or sorry, second best next to Awakening. Like, I like this team. Let's see how far Minnesota can go here. I think this could be really interesting. Do you have any kind of comment on the change there by Minnesota, the the role change by Minnesota, or do you
Yeah,
think, yeah, if you can comment on that, then we'll go on to the next game.
for sure. Yeah, good on the breaking news on your part. Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, Priesta, a very underwhelming year so far, to say the least. He has below average games in 8 of the 10 maps that you could play. He's below average in every hardpoint map. He's above average on Bocage, Search and Destroy, which I think they've only played once or twice. Um, and he's dead on average in Desert Siege Search. Outside of that, it's grades in the 70s, 80s, 90s, like nothing to write home about. I think if you change the pacing and put him on an MP40, that can really change things. He just might not be comfortable running that other automaton when it's needed. So, with that being said, if they're playing Gavutu, he's going to need to run it still. So, maybe they avoid those big maps, try to keep it on Bocage, try to keep it on Tuscan when they can. Um, so yeah, very interesting to see how that plays out. But I think it makes sense. I think if you're Rocker, Major Maniac's doing enough on the main AR. Standy's still Standy. Attach has been very good, especially when on an AR. So switching that up makes sense if you weren't gonna be willing to team change, right? Like Priesta out for somebody else. So we'll see if that works. I kind of think it might. But again, does that change their search and destroy now where maybe they lose some more first bloods? Maybe that brings down the round win percentage a little bit, but maybe it helps hardpoint and control a little. We'll see how it all shakes out. But Minnesota and Toronto, obviously, they're not like the cream of the crop, but two solid teams. So that series should be good. And all things considered, Minnesota has the easiest strength of schedule for this stage. Fun fact, too, Minnesota hosts Major 2. Last Major, we might remember Optic won. And in my pre-stage 1 rankings, Optic had the easiest strength of schedule. So now in hindsight, it wasn't the easiest, but we might have a little bit of schedule manipulation going on. At least now, obviously, they're not changing the schedule on the fly, but I think when the CDL knew who was hosting these majors, they maybe tried to work some things in those teams' favor because you look at Minnesota's schedule, it's not bad at all. This might be their hardest match because after this, it's Paris, which we'll talk about shortly, then Boston, who has been solid, but nothing crazy, LA Thieves, who have been good, and then you get subliners who like might be the worst team in the league. So overall, a good qualifying schedule for Minnesota. If they can beat Toronto, then things are looking really, really good. And if you're Toronto, again, not a huge loss. Even if you right, you are favored in this match. Even if you lose this, like schedule's still pretty good. You do have to play Phase at some point, but outside of that, it's Boston, Paris, and New York. So yeah, pretty winnable overall for both of these teams. So I think both will have relatively good stage twos, but someone's got to lose this first match. So we'll see.
Yeah, just a kind of point there on with you on the fact that maybe that mess with the schedules a little bit, give people a little bit easier schedule before their major. That actually makes a lot of sense for a lot of different ways because again, remember the original thing was like, oh, only the top eight make it. Oh,
Right.
okay. Well, then everybody makes it, but then 'cause remember it was gonna be top eight, but then if you don't get it, then you have this play-in game. So it is very possible that like we never heard about this. Maybe the first attempt for them to fix the whole top eight thing was okay. Well, we'll give the teams whose major it is an easier schedule. But then people were like, they're outraged. Were like, well, we can't say that. The interesting thing would be because the thing is again with the nature of this league, and you see this in the NFL as well. It'd be interesting to see like does any and again you probably don't have this in front of you right now. Does any team before their major do any of them play phase? Because again, they wouldn't completely know who the best teams are, but they know like phase are going to be one of the better teams, right? So
Right,
like does
or that Paris are gonna be one of the worst teams. So we can
yes,
backtrack this to Major 1. Optic did not play FaZe, they do
did
play
play
FaZe
pair.
this stage. They
Optic
did
played
play
Paris,
Paris.
and
Right.
Minnesota played Paris.
Minnesota play Paris, they don't play FaZe, they don't play Optic. They played both those teams last stage, beat Optic, lost to FaZe. So, yeah, there might be something to that where they're like, "Okay, let's make this simple." Like, if you're hosting a major,
You
you're gonna
play
play
Paris,
Paris,
and you
and you're
don't have
not
to
gonna
play.
play FaZe,
Oh
right?
my
Like,
god, could you
that
imagine?
totally could have been in their logic. Because the last thing you want, right, is can you imagine for a second that that stupid rule was in where it's 8 teams make the major, and the team that finishes 9 or the it wasn't even the team that finishes
If
ninth,
they
it
just
was
don't
the
finish top
host
eight,
team. Yeah,
yeah.
if the host team doesn't finish top 8, there's a play-in match for the 8th seed. And it's like, can we just think about, because that almost could have happened if Optic didn't win their last 3 matches of the stage, right? They
Hmm.
started 0-2, and then they win 3 in a row, 1 to
Paris.
Boston, 1 to Toronto, and 1 to Paris, that first one to Paris.
Well, if they
But
didn't beat
it was
Toronto, they were
looking
in risk
like,
of that. If they lost
yeah,
to
that's
Toronto,
1-4 was like a realistic outcome for them. And yeah, like, can you imagine if just Optic were in that scenario? They're playing, let's say Boston or whoever it would have been for eighth seed. They lose that, and now they're hosting a major for 4 days that they're not even in. Like, it was just such a bad idea. But
yeah,
yeah,
you
good thing they switched that up. And honestly, yeah, I do think they did a little schedule tweaking for the better though. Like, I'm all for having the host team at the major, if not in winners bracket, because I do think Rocker are really really set up well to get there. Maybe 4 seed, 5 seed, somewhere in there.
well, so, yeah, you take a look at that. Go for it. I mean, I don't know if you have the entire schedule in front of you right now, but like it would be hilarious if it's like, oh no, if you play a major when you host a major, you don't have to play phase. 'Cause actually, wait, no,
I'll look
Toronto.
into that. While
Yeah, you
while we break down the next games, I'll
okay?
I'll take a
You
look
look into that.
forward to see.
I love these CDL conspiracy theories. Obviously, I've had several along the lines of like they're deliberately manipulating the schedule to be completely outside of the NFL season. We've got a bunch of them, so I'm happy you've finally decided to adopt your own pet CDL conspiracy. Which, by the way, like I would not shock me to find out that these are all 100% true. Like I'm fairly sure they all are 100% true. Anyways, speaking of Phase, this is an amazing lead-in now because Phase is the next match. They're playing Surge -2.5 on the spread, +135. Seattle +2.5, -175. Phase -1200 on the money line. Surge +575. Over 3.5, -175. Under 3.5, +135. Yeah, I'm on Phase here. No, I mean honestly, yeah, this is. I mean, obviously, you can maybe choose. Like the last time they played, Surge did win, but I think it was kind of a little unexpected. It was on LAN. They did win 3-1, but Phase has improved a lot. I'll let I'll let Ryan come in here in a second, see if we can keep finding the schedule information. But again, we make a lot of comparisons to phase, in the phase between the phase and the Kansas City Chiefs in the NFL. Obviously, I think that they're gonna phase will take the loss to optics similar to the way the Chiefs take losses in the NFL. Just to highlight, when the Chiefs lost to the Chargers 30-24, the next week they beat the Eagles 42-30. After they lost to the Bills in the next week after 38-20, the Chiefs immediately turned around and destroyed Washington 31-13. Very up and down season for the Chiefs last year, but no, I think this is kind of FaZe is now going to be on the revenge path, and you even saw it there after they got knocked out of the losers bracket, after the winners bracket, right? They just 3-0 Toronto and what could have been a 3-0 against London. This is FaZe out for blood, and even you saw a little bit of this before, right? When they 3-0'd Boston and they 3-0, like they're getting into form. They're out for blood here. I've got FaZe 3-0, and I've already got FaZe on the hard point. I don't think Seattle's a particularly good hard point team. I mean, you could. What's the spread for game one here? 48.5. I got 47.5, but yeah, 48.5 is still. I don't hate that either. I think the Seattle team is not. not good at hard point. I've got Phase winning it by like 100 points. What do you think here, Ryan? Are we all on Phase minus 2.5 and Phase to win this game, or do you have any hope for Surge?
I do have a little hope for Surge. Yeah, I don't know. Even with that said, I have Surge at an 18% chance to win this game. But that 18% means there might be a little sliver of value on plus 500 or better, right? Plus, I see 575, right? Like if you want to do that, go ahead. I don't think I will. I think I might just sit this one out. Um, but again, we're back to coin flips, right? If Seattle can win the coin flip, get a nice map set, I think they might be favored in the control map. Hardpoint, you're right, is a huge mismatch. Um, and it's like you're not going to want to play them on Bocage. So what does that leave you? Yeah, Seattle's path looks pretty narrow. It's probably got to be search and destroy, control, search and destroy. Um, and the one case I'll make for them, first blood win percentage, they're third in the league. Atlanta's second, right? So there's that. But a pretty big discrepancy in their round win percentage. Seattle, 51% or so, and Atlanta, we already talked about 56%. So there's only about a 1% difference in their first blood rate, but a 5% difference in the round win rate. So maybe Seattle positively regresses here and takes out Atlanta in a couple close search and destroys. Maybe they can hold defense and that control. Like that's the path because, yeah, their hard point has looked not great as of late. And it honestly wasn't super impressive at Kickoff Classic or in their first two matches of the Stage 1 qualifiers, but it's looked even worse now. So that's the path for Seattle. Yeah, maybe take Seattle to win exactly 3-2. Like that might not be a bad idea. But overall, I think one I'm gonna avoid. I am curious though to see how much it moves depending on that Seattle Boston match from earlier in the weekend. Um, if Seattle do win that, like, will that be considered an upset, even though right now it's not marked as an upset? I think it might be. Um, and that Seattle price crashes a little bit, maybe too much. Maybe then there's more value on phase. I don't know. I don't love it. Seattle's a hard team to figure out, right? But yeah, I really don't want to step in front of Atlanta after a good major for them. Like, I don't think there's any debating that it was bad. Like, it wasn't horrible, but you lost to the best team in the game twice. Like, yeah, that'll happen. So, um, yeah, that's all I have to say about that. About the upcoming majors. Now, it doesn't have it listed on the website. I'm fairly certain Toronto's hosting Major 3 and New York is hosting Major 4. So, with those assumptions in mind, um, for Major 3 at least, I haven't checked Major 4. It does check out because Toronto, here's their schedule: Seattle, Minnesota, New York, Paris, and London. Which, if you're thinking about preseason expectations for those teams, that's a really easy schedule, right? Like, yeah, no phase. Paris is in there. Optic's not in there. So very favorable for Toronto. Again, if Toronto's the host for Major 3, which I think they are. Um, Major 4, here, I'm doing this on the fly. I haven't even looked at this one yet. Assuming New York is the host, they play Florida, LAG, Seattle, Optic. Okay, that's a toughie. And LA Thieves. So no Paris, but no phase. But overall, that seems, again, relatively easy, all things considered.
To be
So yeah,
fair, yeah, to
I
to be fair for Major 4, they might have accidentally backed into themselves into a corner with the schedule with Major 4 because it's the last one, so they might have had to fit some games in there they didn't want to, if it's assuming it's subliners. But yeah, Toronto in Major 3, yeah, that's an insane stat. Well, wait, is there anybody in Major 4 who plays Paris but not FaZe?
plays Paris, but not
Well, there's
phase.
actually probably a lot of people.
Yeah, Optic might fall into that bucket. Yeah, Optic do not play phase, but they play Paris. Thieves play both FaZe and Paris. Who else is there?
Minnesota
Paris plays Seattle. Seattle
does not play
does
FaZe.
no, they do play FaZe, so they play both. So I don't know about that,
Close.
but yeah, I,
Still,
I think our hypothesis might be correct.
yeah, they might have boxed themselves into a corner with Major 5, so subliners had to play Thieves and Optic, but then their other 3 games, because their other 3 games are Surge, which was one of the worst teams last year, so definitely possible they could have been a bad team, and LAG and Florida. So like that's
Very
yeah,
winnable games. Yeah.
that's some questions. I think we have some questions. There's a chart of conspiracy theories. This is like the second tier. Like we have questions. Um, moving on to Sunday. Minnesota, the first game on Sunday, Minnesota Rocket versus Paris. Minnesota -1.5, -135. Paris +1.5, +105. Minnesota -450 on the money line. Paris +295. Minnesota over 4.5, +185. Under 4.5, -250. Yeah, my model really likes Minnesota here. My model is really surprisingly high in Minnesota, especially for a team that won one game in the major. But I mean, to be honest, they were always kind of like this middle of the pack team, and they're playing Toronto, who we think the model thinks is fallen to the middle of the pack, and Paris probably one of the worst teams, and still one of the worst teams. So yeah, give me Rocker -135 here. I'm not messing with Paris here. I think Rocker gets the job done. Probably, Rocker definitely can beat Paris in a hard point. They probably win it 3-1 or maybe even 3-0. What do you think here?
Yeah, I do have Paris as a slight favorite in control. Now, that might flip if Minnesota wins the coin flip. But we'll see how that plays out. Yeah, I again this both Paris games I don't love either of them. And I do slightly favor Paris's opponent in both of them slightly. Even in the LAG game slightly, but again, all things considered, it's really tough because Tom Gravity looked good, right? And yeah, it is also surprising to me. My model doesn't hate Minnesota either. And I think a lot of that has to do with they probably had the hardest strength of schedule throughout stage one, like qualifiers and the major. It was pretty difficult. Yeah, like they played, I'm trying to remember, they played Optic and FaZe. In the major, they played Thieves. They played who was their round one was against LAG. That maybe wasn't tough. They also played LAG in the qualifiers. But like when you got to play FaZe and Optic at any point, and those two teams are kind of in their own tier, like yeah, that's gonna be really tough. So now they get an easy schedule, relatively speaking, unless Paris are somehow not the worst team in the league. But yeah, I kind of like Minnesota here. I think if you like them like we do, I think it's best to take them now because we also see value in them against Toronto. So if they do pull off that upset, that Minnesota price versus Paris is gonna go. Um, that being said, we kind of like somewhat like Paris in the LAG match, so maybe it won't matter in the end. But yeah, Minnesota are the better search team by far. Again, Paris showed improvements with the new roster, and not only a new roster, but they also did shuffle around some of the role changes. We'll see if they're for better or for worse. Temp looked very good on an AR. Fellow still kind of struggled on the SMG. And then John looked kind of what he's looked like all year, and Gravity looked good on his AR. So we'll see how the roster shuffle and the positional shuffle shakes out in these next few matches for Paris. I want them to be good. Like, I don't want a team in the basement of this league. I want a really, really high floor for everybody. Um, that being said, I kind of think Minnesota win this. I don't know, but a Paris like a 1-1 record after week one isn't bad, all things considered. You play LAG, you play Minnesota. Their strength of schedule throughout the stage isn't super tricky, all things considered. And honestly, this might be bold, but if there's a major where Paris are going to start in winner's bracket, I kind of think it's this one. I did crunch the numbers on teams' chances of winning three or more qualifying matches. And I want to say I had Paris at like a 7% chance of that happening. Yeah, 7%, which is last. But, there's like a one in whatever that is, 1 in 19 shot. It's not nothing. So, Paris, I'm rooting for you. shock the world, start in winners bracket. But if that's going to happen, you're probably going to have to go 2-0 this weekend. And I think Minnesota's just a little too tough for them. But a 1-1 start, still not bad. But for now, again, stay away. Slight lean to Minnesota.
I will say that with Paris, apparently CDL Intel was tweeting out that I can't remember. I think it was um, Jimbo, or they were basically he was in a lobby
Yes.
with Gravity and the Paris team coach. So I would not again. I don't think it's going to be now, but again, like the thing is, it's weird that Paris just seems to flick the switch and they're like, okay, fine, let's fix this team now. This is an embarrassment. You're not going to embarrass us. Um, I mean, there's. I mean, here's the we knocked Paris a lot early because we were like, this team is a joke, and it was a joke. But at the same time, though, maybe they were like, okay, this team is a joke. We know it's a joke, but then we're gonna see who's doing what, who's not horrible, and then we're gonna then get challengers players. Like it's kind of like a weird reverse Moneyball, where like you send out like early in the season, like we're gonna suck, but then we're gonna like figure out who's actually worth value. Then we're gonna weird take on Moneyball, especially when you know that. But I mean, to be fair, the season does kind of matter too. So, but anyways, yeah, I could see Paris making a team change in a couple weeks just to kind of make themselves better, and I think there's still room for them to improve. Again, the next candidate, next people on kind of the bench would be kind of either John or Fellow. Question is who which one's going to be first. Temp is clearly not going to get benched. Um, Again, maybe they'll give him some time to see. Honestly, Fellow and John seem to be kind of really mixy on. It depends on who's better on any given map. They go up and down, right? So we'll have to see. But next up on Sunday, Subliners versus Florida. Subliners plus 1.5 minus 125. Florida minus 1.5 minus 105. Subliners plus 170 on the money line. Florida minus 240. Subliners over 4.5 plus 155. Florida under 4.5 minus 205. I think it's gonna be hilarious because like if Florida soundly beats LAG, which they probably will, they'll lose this game. Like honestly, that would be the Florida we all know and love. Would be like, okay, we're gonna beat LAG because as we're expected to do. Florida gets up to like a minus 300 favorite in this game, and then just gets blown out. That is the Florida we all know and love. And like I can 100% see that happening here. That being said though, my model actually where is it here? Model loves Florida. Model has a 91% chance of Florida winning this game, which seems insanely high. Um, but I mean, Florida should win this game. Subliners are one of the worst teams in the league. Again, Florida subliners can improve, right? It's like that number is not static. That number will be updated after Friday's game. So like that number could crash. Like the model is going to be a lot more reactive to individual games now, which I think is kind of good. It catches on to trends a lot faster. So I actually I'm really really excited to see what happens in this game. But yeah, I've got Florida 3-1. I'm interested to see if subliners can prove me wrong. And to be honest, if someone would prove me wrong, it would be the subliners. Subliners would beat Florida and shock the world, as it were. What do you think here? Do you think are you with me that like if Florida beats LAG, bet subliners here, or are you like nah, Florida all the way?
Yeah, I love the like flip flop thing there. Cause yeah, I have Florida favored in this match by like 61% or so. And in the LAG match, I have them favored about 63%. So when you break it down, the most likely outcome for them this weekend is to finish 1-1, right? Despite being favored in both matches, it's relatively close, so you'd expect it to be split. So yeah, I kind of like if Florida look okay versus LAG, just go the other way and take New York. And assuming New York will lose to London because I love London, I think you get still a decent price on New York in this potential matchup. So, um, yeah, I don't love it right now, but depending on what Florida do in their first match, then I might. So, yeah, I think that's the one way to play it. Again, we talk about it all the time. Florida very inconsistent. So whatever you saw last, just assume that won't happen in the next match. But I do have Florida as slight favorites in every game mode. And yeah, I kind of see a 3-1 being the most likely outcome as well. So wait it out. I'm definitely going to do that, but I might come around to Florida or New York, depending on how those first matches for those teams go, but especially for how they go for Florida.
The interesting thing about Florida is like my model really likes Florida because probably because Awakening, because it's based on kills. So, like Awakening just went nuts. They had a massive positive differential that series, and because of that, even because of that, they still lost. Like I think that's what the model is seeing. That's why it's on Florida so high. Again, it's tempered out a little bit by the Elo model, but still, though, it's kind of hilarious that again, what plus 45, they lost the series. It's Florida for you. Last game on Sunday. Last game of the week. Thieves versus Optic. I'm excited for this game. Thieves plus 1.5 minus 130. Optic minus 1.5 even plus 100. Money Thieves money line plus 220. Optic money line minus 330. Minus 300. Over 4.5 plus 150. Under 4.5 minus 200. So Thieves versus Optic. This is a classic matchup that we talked a lot about this last year. We've had some very hilarious moments with this matchup. We could have had this in the finals. Maybe realistically could have if Thieves had closed out Phase. This actually crashed a lot. This opened at Thieves plus 330 on the money line. I grabbed that, and that this is one of the games I got amazing good closing line values on. The plus 1.5 was actually plus 110. I grabbed that immediately. Um, do you remember what we said last year about Thieves versus Optic? We said don't bet on this game, buy Bitcoin. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
bet the underdog. I think my rule for when Thieves play Optic is just always bet on the underdog, and I think that actually has paid off like what most of the time. I mean, honestly, this Optic team should not be this favorite against this Thieves team. Like, should they win this game? Yeah, they should probably win this game. I actually have Optic as a really big favorite in this game. Weirdly enough, I have them winning 3-1 with like 88% chance of winning. Again, it's not like my model isn't like 90% every way. It's just that randomly it has Optic really favored. But it has the hard points dead even. But then it has Optic dominating in searches and controls. Um, so basically, it's kind of interesting. I mean, could Optic win this 3-1? 100% they could. 100%. Should they? No. And honestly, I think this is the revenge. The Thieves are going to be mad. Optic, this you can make a very strong case for Optic hangover after the Phase match. Thieves coming off the loss against Phase again. They're going to take they get a warm up against London. I think Thieves come out here frying. I think Thieves or Optic's going to come a little hungover after their major win. And again, you're never going to get a great price on an Optic team ever, basically, but especially not when they're coming off a major win. Could I have egg on my face after this and by ignoring my model having Optic as massive favorites? Yeah, but I mean, I don't hate. I like Thieves here. I'm taking Thieves. I think the model is off a bit. I think it's a little too reactionary to Optic dominating Phase in the finals. I think that Thieves could definitely come out here and they could definitely get the upset. What do you think?
I disagree strongly. And that's rare. I don't usually disagree this much, but Optics a team, Robert. They're very, very good. Um, and I don't want to just whittle this down to like a couple of matches, but Optic beat Atlanta FaZe in map count at the major 10-4. Like it wasn't even close when you add up the two series. Thieves played FaZe once and they lost 2-3. And I already talked about that series. It was a 2-3 loss, which sounds close, and it was a reverse sweep too. Like all that being said, Atlanta dominated in those last three maps, and Thieves kind of squeaked out those first two wins. So maybe not a 2-3. Yeah, these teams are on a different tier, I would say. And honestly, I didn't think there'd be this much value on Optic, but there still kind of is. What I'll also say is if you think that London LA Thieves game goes how I think it might go, and London win, or at least look really good, and Thieves maybe struggle, like this price for Optic is going to go away because Optic doesn't play until this match Sunday night. So I kind of like them. I think I'm going to take them now. The minus 1.5 is my favorite. It's at even money. I have them winning in three maps or four maps, 56% of the time. So about a 6% edge on that. Yeah, like you said, close and hardpoint. Both of these hardpoint teams, very close. I think if it gets to a map four, those hardpoints are split 1-1. And yeah, the searches and the controls are a big, big mismatch. Optic is so good at control. And I know it's only played once a series, but they are utterly dominant in that game mode. The three controls they played versus FaZe, another good control team, they won all of those. They're 10-1 on the year in that mode. Thieves are 6-6, not bad, but not good. The one thing I will say that worries me just a little bit, search and destroy, right? It does look like a big mismatch. First blood percentage actually goes to Thieves slightly. Both teams are hovering around 48, 49% first blood percentage. Optic, though, are third in round win percentage, winning about 54% of the time. Thieves are third worst, winning 46% of the time. So maybe those even out. Maybe it's more of a 50-50 search. But just watching Optic play search, like, if they start getting these first bloods, man, they might be the best search and destroy team in the league. And I kind of think they are. Because despite like when they're not getting those first bloods, they play so patiently and play around the bomb site. Like they're waiting to bait out that kill to even the lives again. And it's so smart. I don't like see other teams do this enough where you're down a man, you work your way to a bomb site, but you don't plant because you don't want to have to defend a bomb site 3v4 ideally. So you tick that clock down, force the defense to start peeking at bomb sites, and you find a pick or two that way. Then you plant when it's even and you just up your odds. They work that so well. Shout out Rambo Ray and all the coaches on that team. Like, we would not have seen this, like, we didn't see it Optic last year. That just did not happen. Um, Now this year we're seeing it. If their first blood percentage can go up, which I think it can, this team's very good, then watch out. Like it's gonna be tough. Thieves, their first blood percentage to round win expectancy is about what you'd expect. I just worry so much with that team. And their map pool not quite as deep, right? Very good on Gavudu, very good on Berlin. Texas are too though. And Texas are pretty good on those fast maps. Like if it's Shotzi and Scump versus Envoy and Draza, like I'll take the team with Shotzi on it. Like, yeah, I like Optic, which I don't usually like them this much, but yeah, their major performance was very, very, very impressive. And maybe this is an overreaction. Maybe they'll come down to earth, right? Every team has a high, has a low. Maybe we saw the high from Optic, but I don't know. I still think this Thieves team is good, but slightly overvalued. So that's my case for Optic.
You actually make it very well. I mean, I don't hate taking Thieves against London, and then basically if Thieves beat Optic, if Thieves not Thieves against London, sorry, if Thieves beat London, and then this line gets even closer, because like I am actually eyeing this now, and the thing is, I did get amazing closing line value, and I got it in a book where I can cash it out. So like if this line gets closer, actually my book is Optic is still minus 1.5 is minus 120. I'm actually gonna. The thing is, like, my model says Optic should be massively favored, and you're also agreeing Optic should be massively favored. It's just the question is, can they continue? Can they continue to be one of the best teams in the league? That's the question. That's the real question. And I don't know. I mean, we haven't talked a lot about Optic this week. Obviously, they won the major. They've become a lot better of a team. Illy is massively improved. Um,
The
it's
one thing I will say with Thieves, right? Coin flip does matter in this
yeah.
match, which kind of sucks. I kind of wish it didn't. But yeah, Control Optic are 1 and 2 on Gavudu and Tuscan. Let me make sure that's accurate. Yep, 1 on Gavudu, 2 on Tuscan. Thieves 3 on Gavudu, 9 on Tuscan. So, right, either map they play, they're going to be underdogs in Control. But if they get Gavudu, they've got a shot, especially if it still kills as the tiebreaker. Again, we'll see if it's kills or if it's ticks um, in the end. But yeah, and Thieves, right, an above 500 record on every hardpoint map. Optic can't say that, right? Optic probably got to ban Berlin. They're 0-3 on it. Every other map, they are 10-4. So, right, ban Berlin. Thieves are very good at Berlin. That seems like an easy call, even if they don't win the coin flip. And if you're Thieves, I guess you ban Bocage, just because it's mixy and random, and you don't want to get into that versus Optic. So we'll see how it plays out. It's going to be a really, really good series either way. I think there's 3-0 potential if Optic win that map one and if they win the coin flip. Like if we're looking at an Optic map one win and Gavudu, I'm sorry, and Tuscan control, like I worry a lot about Thieves at that point. But obviously this match is always fun, even if it's a blowout or if it's close. Thieves did get the better of them at Kickoff Classic, and I want to say that was a 3-0. Um, that happened so long ago, I can't quite remember. But yeah, Thieves they have a shot. I think step one is win the coin flip, and when that's step one, I'm not gonna love the team, but we'll see. We'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, and I'm curious to see how this will go. I think there's a really good case to be made for. I mean, there's a really good case to be made for Optic, and to be honest, I might change up my bet. I might go to Optic by the time 8 o'clock on Sunday rolls around. But no, I mean, I might. I'm gonna definitely consider it. I don't think this is necessarily a done deal. I mean, we'll see. I'd love to be on Thieves. I thought that price was too high for Thieves. I think it probably is. That being said, though, we're getting a lot. But like again, you go from plus 300 to plus 200 something. It's a lot of money on Thieves. A lot of people are betting on Thieves. Maybe necessarily not the best to always follow the public money. Um, so I'm gonna have to. We'll see. Let's see how Thieves look against the Ravens. I'm gonna rewatch probably FaZe versus Atlanta. Thieves versus Atlanta. Sorry, and we'll see. Maybe I will change it up. We'll have to see. Maybe I'll go with the model. I'll let you know on Twitter on when I post the final picks on Sunday. I will let everybody know. Well, thank you for coming on, Ryan of CDL Metrics at CDL Metrics. And again, as he mentioned, that pin tweet with the player grades again. This is an amazing absolutely just an amazing project that we've worked on here. Again, borrowing a little bit, not so much, well, not borrowing per se, kind of in homage to PFF player grades for the NFL. Now we have basically player grades for the CDL, which is again the first of its kind. And again, it's not exactly the same as the PFF grades, but again, it gives us an indication of like who is the problem on the teams, right? Because right now the only way you could look at that is KD. Right, you're like, oh well, this guy's a higher KD, or a lower KD, he's the problem, right? This gives us more of a nuanced look at that, and I think it's an invaluable tool, and I think we're gonna talk a lot more about these player grades again. Like as we talked about, we mentioned a couple teams that could be making a team change. Even Toronto in there too, right? Like Kleenex is like if Toronto loses through into Minnesota, I mean it's very possible we could. I don't think it's gonna be that bad, but like we might see it. Like I think Toronto will probably stick through the stage because the rosters earned it at this point. But I could definitely see a situation where we see like a team change for Toronto by at the end of this next major. And I could like I mean, like subliners could be making a team change, right? We could talk about it in terms of like again, people are like Neptune, we want Neptune back. It's like, well, Neptune's actually like the worst player in the league who's played the most maps, right? Like next to Royalty. Like he's slightly better than Hixie, but again, Hixie played 3 maps. So again, that's heavily kind of biased. And they didn't actually do well in those 3 maps, even though they won 3-0. But like yeah, there's a lot of important points that these grades are catching and nuance, and it's important to have that in league. So thank you for working on this project, and yeah, everybody check it out. It's actually really cool. And yeah, we will see you next week. Thank you for listening.